What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Bearcast here on Sikkim365.com. Brought to you by Burt Colchin Ford, the number one selling truck in Texas, and no better way to tailgate than with the Ford from BK. Also brought to you by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. I'm Craig Smoke, Sikkim365.com team reporter. Also, Sikkim365 radio host, joined as always by Grayson Grunhafer, director of broadcasting, also Sikkim365.com team and recruiting reporter. And we come to you with a special edition this week because after a little bit of discussion about it on the last episode or two, the Baylor Lady Bears have found their next head coach to replace Kim Mulkey, who has gone off to Baton Rouge in a well-publicized exit, but now a new woman in charge of the Lady Bears basketball program and trying to maintain their success and, if at all possible, take it to even, another level, which would be very difficult to do. But, hey, if trying to be optimistic about this, there is room to grow technically. I mean, you could win it every year, right? Or be in the Final Four every single year. But that's the kind of pressure or similar type of pressure to what the new head coach of the Lady Bears will have on her shoulders. And that person will be Nicki Collen, who comes over from the WNBA. She was the head coach, albeit briefly, for the Atlanta Dream. Was actually scheduled to have a couple former Lady Bears on her roster in the WNBA this season. But quite frankly, from what we could tell, never even got a chance to get to know her team all that much because she's already headed off to Baylor. Grayson and Nicki Collen, not a name that a lot of people, I think, had on the tips of their tongue. I know there was this big thing online and whatever on Molly Miller. I know she became like kind of a cult favorite just because I don't know how many other coaches people could name. And, she's young and has a fancy record and all of that. My question with her was just, the amount of experience and things like that. Nicki Collen, her experience isn't just like vast. It's not like 20 years as a head coach or anything along those lines. So they didn't go for like super seasoned veteran. There's some room there to kind of, there's some wiggle room there, I guess. But your thoughts just initially on, there's also the talk about Barnes from Arizona and various other names. But I guess I saw the name Nicki Collen kind of late in the process, and then obviously Ashley had it on the board before it became public that he felt like she was going to be the name. So your thoughts on Nicki Collen, head coach of the Lady Bears?
Yeah, I was going to say Brian and Ashley were both ahead of this, on the website. I think that was a big thing. They were able to get the name out there and kind of start trying to figure out if she was going to be a real candidate, if she could end up being the Lady Bears head coach, which obviously ended up happening. So she'll be introduced Wednesday at 2:30 in the Farrell Center, which will be really cool. I'm excited for this, step forward in the process for the Lady Bears. I told you when we talked about this, I guess it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I was hoping they would get someone who was a little bit younger, who could kind of grow into the role and also be with the Baylor program for a long time. And I think that Nicki could be that person for this staff. And so I'm excited to see what she does with the assistant coaches. I think that's going to be huge for her. Obviously, she was the coach of the year in the WNBA this past year. I don't know how much stock I'm going to put into that, but clearly she knows what she's doing. She can coach. She's been doing it for a long time at various programs, Colorado State, Ball State, Louisville, Arkansas, Florida Gulf Coast, of course, with the Atlanta Dream in the WNBA. So I think that it is a sneaky good hire, but I also think it's one where you look at the instant reaction from a lot of people, and I would say the majority of people are kind of confused, and a lot of people are complaining about the hire, and I found that to be really interesting when, once again, all Mac Rhodes really has done, at least since I've seen him take over the AD role at Baylor, is land really good coaches. And I think that's been a pretty consistent theme. And if he believes in her, then I think the Baylor fan base should at least give her the chance to really prove it. And I have a feeling she's going to do some great things. We've already heard great things about the roster, seeming like it's probably going to remain intact. The recruiting haul that they were able to land also seems like that's going to be okay too. So I think she's going to have a lot of talent to work with. And obviously she's been able to do it at the college and pro level. So I'm excited to see what Coach Collen can do.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, honestly, I retweeted the announcement towards the end of the show, and then I kind of just walked away because I knew that not a lot of people even knew who she was, and so therefore there was just going to be a lot of, complaining and moaning because all of a sudden everybody is experts on hiring women's basketball coaches because, there's been a vacancy for 2 weeks, so now everybody knows, like, what it takes to be the head coach of a championship program. You know what I mean? It's just funny how that works. This has like Matt Rule vibes to me, like similar reactions when everybody was an expert on how that worked as well. And then they were super experts that first year when, it took time to like fix things. And then they were mysteriously gone or suddenly like had always believed in Matt Rule by like 2 years later. And I think that if Nicki Collen has success, then that will be the case here. And if she doesn't, then those people will be the loudest in the room. But yeah, I've seen this former Lady Bear player who's like just complaining like crazy, and because I guess she played college basketball and like is like a low-level high school coach, that she automatically knows who made the right hire or not. I mean, hey, opinions are what they are. Everybody's got one, right? And some people will be right that are disappointed, maybe, but maybe not. And I'm willing to give it a chance because I know I don't know any better. I've watched Kim Mulkey for the last, 7-8 years. That's all I really know. And I sure as heck don't know the first thing about hiring someone. All I know is Colin had the desire to replace a Kim Mulkey, and I don't think everybody's really willing to step up to the plate and just go fill those shoes right away. I know, I saw some – what has she done? It's like being a coach in the WNBA is like just nothing. Like it's everybody does that. Like it's like a middle school basketball coach or YMCA volunteer. Yeah, like because those jobs, just everybody's done that. So I mean, I don't get the desire by some people to just immediately look for knocks or like why this sucks or whatever. I mean, welcome, and I hope you do well, Coach, and we'll look forward to following your basketball teams. But, look at the resume, and it wasn't exactly like, what I expected, but I don't really know what I expected. I knew it wasn't going to be Dawn Staley or Gino Auriemma, or I knew it was going to be Karen Aston going to, like, the other side of the poll. So, like, what was there? I mean, 3 or 4 people that everybody – did what they do with every coaching search, and every college does this. They get stuck on like 2 or 3 names, and then they just force themselves to only want those 2 or 3 names because it's like, what did everybody do? They wanted Molly Miller. Why they want Molly Miller? Because Drake's spamming it online, and like 2 or 3 people are commenting just because she's hot that like she should be the coach. And like I saw this coming a mile away, dude. I saw it coming a mile away, and I just think it's unfortunate because it was so obvious this was going to happen no matter who was named the head coach. If it wasn't like 2 names, it was going to be mostly complaining. And so, I think that is, to be expected. But I'm excited to see what she can do, and I'm excited to learn more, excited to hear her for the first time. I've never really heard her talk. Don't know much about, her coaching style or things like that. But you mentioned, Queen Egbo seemed receptive to the news. Nalissa Smith seemed receptive to the news. If you read as much as you want to into tweets or whatever, we do need to mention that Hannah Gusters has already left and committed to Kim Mulkey at LSU. That took no time at all for that to happen. So there was one departure. Moon Urson's going to go to LSU probably too. I mean, this seems to be what's going to happen.
Sounds like collusion.
Well, no, I mean, she's going to nursing school and
No, Hannah Gusters.
Oh, I mean.
A little bit.
Whatever. But
it is what it is. We knew it was going to happen.
I'm just, it is what it is. That's why I'm just glossing over it. But, and then Moon Urson probably will do the same thing. So that's kind of initial impressions. I mean, maybe you've seen some others who have commented or not. But there's my little rant on it. I just, this should be a good thing and a positive thing. And, yeah, it's replacing a legend and all that. But, you're all to blame. You're all to blame because you worked yourselves up into wanting only 1 or 2 people. And Grayson, that's really just, I guess, my rant for the day on the whole coaching search and everything.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was just so fixated on a couple names, and if it wasn't going to be those names, they were going to be unhappy and go on a rant. And, of course, people digging into things that, people have said or done. And obviously that's going to happen with any coach you hire. But I think at the end of the day, Nicki's going to do a very good job with this Baylor program. I think, like I said, I think her age is something that's really, really cool. She's in her 40s, which is awesome. So she's going to have time to really grow into the role even more and make it her own, kind of like Kim Mulkey did, and really hopefully provide a legacy for herself at Baylor. And I think the Lady Bears are going to be in great shape. I know everyone wants to say, oh, it's an end of an era. They're going to be terrible next year. It's going to be a rebuild year. I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm totally bought into it being a rebuilding year. I think this team has a lot of talent back. Obviously, if they start losing people left and right, that would be different. But everything I've seen, I mean, if you return Nalissa Smith, you return Queen Egbo, and you return, basically the whole team outside of Hannah Gusters and Moon Urson, I really think this team's going to be pretty good. And I'm excited to see what kind of additions she makes and kind of her path on the recruiting side of things, because that's something I do have question marks about. How is she going to be as a recruiter? Because Kim had such a good track record with that. I think a big part of it will be who she hires as assistant coaches as well. But I am really excited because I got a text on the day she was hired from my dad and my mom, actually, who both are Purdue grads. And she actually played at Purdue and Marquette in college, and then she went and played overseas as well. So she's a pretty good player in her own right. Was an all-conference player while she was at Marquette. So really good basketball coach, I think, really good player at one point, and I think she's going to lead these Lady Bears into a good path going forward. And I think the reaction from everyone was really the biggest part that I was pretty excited with, because if this team returns, like I said, I don't think you're going to have too severe of a drop-off, and who knows, maybe Baylor continues their winning ways in the Big 12. I would not bet against it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would. I don't know that anybody has enough knowledge to be able to make that call right now. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're already putting a period on the end of the sentence for Nicki Collen, then, I guess you're just that type of a person that needs to be
go bet on
negative or something.
Go bet, I mean, if that's what
go
it's
ahead.
Gonna be.
But that's the thing though, is if she does well, all that stuff's gonna not matter. It's like hot take sports nowadays. I mean, we have our opinions on things and whatnot on the show, but there's just this whole culture that's grown up with just it's hot takes or whatever grabs eyeballs or whatever. Yeah. And so sometimes it's the hottest opinions or reactions to a head coaching hire, and then nobody remembers it after the fact. So hopefully Nicki Collen is the type of hire that Mack Rhodes only has to make once, and then the type of hire that much like a Matt Rule or Scott Drew, eventually proves, any detractors wrong or has the time to prove what they can do. So we will see with Nicki Collen starting right now. And, there's a lot of work to do. You got to keep this roster intact as best as you possibly can, even though a couple of players seem to have, indicated that they'll be back. You got to get, recruiting ties in order. You got to get, your surroundings in order. You got to get that talk with the team. And, there's a lot of things to do when you first take over. So this will be a very important time. Luckily for Nicki Collen, unlike Dave Aranda, she does not have a pandemic as much to worry about as when he initially took over. It's not like recruiting is entirely shut down and travel is completely off, can't be on campus or all that. Luckily that's working in her favor. So hopefully that gets her off to a hot start. But any other thoughts just on the women's basketball coaching search and Nicki Collen and just kind of, I guess, anything else that comes with it? I mean, as you mentioned, she was Coach of the Year 2 years ago in the WNBA, because obviously there wasn't a season last year. Atlanta Dream. Kalani Brown was going to be on her team. And who was the other one?
Was it Odyssey?
Yeah, Odyssey Sims. But Kalani was one of those that Smokey had reached out to that said she hadn't gotten a chance to get to know her yet, so couldn't really comment too much, but was excited that her new coach is going to be the new Lady Bears head coach. 2 seasons, Connecticut Sun under head coach Kurt Miller. They showed some improvement there right before she went on over to take the job with the Atlanta Dream. Just had a regular statement in the release, not too much, so we'll really get to know a lot tomorrow whenever the press conference is. But, a lot of experience in the college game, not so much as a head coach, but has bounced around. You mentioned a couple of the spots, Florida Gulf Coast, Louisville, etc. And, yeah, I guess we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to add. Outside of people who were upset about the hire, I was so impressed with Baylor Lady Bear fans during this process. Just the amount of attention and amount of just excitement about this next step forward for the Baylor program. I know a lot of people were sad as well when Kim left, rightfully so. I totally understand that, but really, really good fans that the Lady Bears have. And I was just so shocked and surprised at how many there were. And I just thought that was such a cool part of this process. And hopefully everyone changes their mindset and are able to back Nicki Collen, because I just think, you gotta give her a shot. Just like with Matt Rule, just like with Dave Aranda, even with Scott Drew, who wasn't a Mack Rhodes hire, you just got to give them time and see how the hire does in the long run. But I'm really excited about this, and just great job, Lady Bear fans. Y'all were tremendous during this process.
Yeah, a lot of passion here in Waco for women's basketball, and we saw that during the coaching search. Good to have it over and now turn the page, and we'll see what she does leading the Lady Bears program, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of news on that coming up over, the next few weeks. We'll have little notes here and there on, the roster, who's officially sticking around, who's maybe out the door, who's joining in recruiting, who's going to be on the staff, all of those types of things. But we know Hannah Gusters is gone, probably Moon Urson, and the rest is to be determined. And then, of course, they had like the Oliver duo gone as well. So, a little bit of housekeeping to do for sure for Nicki Collen as Lady Bears' new head women's basketball coach. So outside of that, had the NFL draft over the weekend, and was not expecting much going into this thing. Really, the only name that appeared to have any type of a chance to get drafted was William Bradley King. And, man, it was a long wait. Did not happen on night one. Knew it was not going to happen on night one, because that means you'd have to be a first-round draft pick. And I've been saying kind of for the last few months now that I wasn't really sure about William Bradley King and his draft prospects. And if anything, I think if you go back and listen, I said at one point that I've made the comment, at least at certain points, of him either being a late-round pick or maybe not getting drafted at all. And I think, as of a couple weeks ago, on either this show or another show, I'd said, vibes I was getting was like he might not even get drafted. And then we had a guest on whose name I can't remember on the radio show. He's talking about William Bradley King like the middle rounds. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm certainly not following that closely, but if you say so. And I saw maybe a couple of other reports out there, and, like a mock draft had him in the 6th round, and maybe another one had him in like the 7th or whatever. But he ends up going Grayson late. He does go, though, and that's, a great thing to be able to, have happened. A cool moment in your life is to get your name called. So William Bradley King does get that, goes 240 overall, and he is now a member of the Washington football team. So a long wait for him, day 3, last round of picks, basically. So was running out of time, and did get his name called. Your thoughts on William Bradley King, the wait, and the fit in Washington with the football team?
Yeah, I was getting a little nervous there at the end of the draft. I really thought he was going to go earlier, and the guy who sold me on it was Jim Nagy, who was on y'all's show. I was listening to his interview, and I was just thinking, man, this guy thinks he's going to be a 3rd or 4th round pick, and he doesn't go till the 7th round. So it makes you wonder what exactly was the holdup, what was causing teams to have a whole lot of hesitancy on drafting him. I will say, though, he doesn't have a clearly defined position. I wouldn't say at the next level he's going to have to turn into just a dominant pass rusher, much like a Von Miller type. He is not Von Miller, let me clarify, but he's going to have to turn into that type of player if he wants to stick in the NFL. He's going to a good situation, though, a really good defense, which, they have a bunch of pass rushers as well. So he might have a hard time finding playing time, or they might be able to utilize him in special packages as well. So I think he could be a little bit of a sneaky steal, a guy who actually lasts in the league for a little bit. And maybe I'm listening to Jim Nagy too much. He is a guy who I I kind of respect his opinions quite a bit usually, and he felt like William Bradley King had a pretty high ceiling, 18 sacks in his career, 7 forced fumbles, 28 and a half tackles for loss. The thing with him, his motor does run cool at times, so he's going to have to get that fixed. But overall, hey, he's drafted. He's going to the league. Really excited for him. I'm going to be following him. I'm going to be watching, hoping that he does really well with the Washington football team. And, hey, another Baylor player drafted. So got to be happy with that, even though there wasn't much excitement this year. Hopefully there's more this next year and in future years, as Baylor really needs to do a better job in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, they've started to get numbers. I know at one point, post-Bryles, there was, I don't know, like one point in time, there was like 8, 9 guys in the NFL, and maybe I'm off a little bit, but what was there was not very memorable. I mean, now you look up and you've got 20 guys in the NFL. So that's really ballooned, and a lot of those are still Browse guys. You know, several of them are rule guys that just in the last couple of years gotten into the league. Now you've got your first Aranda guy with William Bradley King. So, yeah, I think there's, at last count, and this will go down because there's not many candidates to join the party right now until next year's draft, and there's a lot of guys who are, like, hanging on rosters that – you know, could be cut when the roster starts to trim down again. I'm just thinking of, like, really the majority of the guys are kind of not sure things in the NFL. So we'll have to see how that number fluctuates and whatnot. But shoot, man, like I said, there was a time not that long ago when they had like 10, 11 guys, and now they've got 20. And if Aranda, can get the most out of these guys, you should have a handful joining you next year. I mean, at least. I mean, that should be one of the biggest Baylor draft classes potentially in a long time. And it's not going to be Bama with like 13 dudes or nothing, but it could be a handful, could be 5 or 6, maybe even more off of next year's team if they all, can kind of reach a high enough level and healthy, can be blessed health-wise and everything just kind of goes their way. You could have 6, 7 guys maybe next year in the NFL draft. So, it was good to see William Bradley King get his name called. If they start like a streak or whatever, then, they're able to avoid getting that snapped. Elsewhere, Jake Burton also in the NFL, maybe the most non-Baylor guy ever, because just like even when he was drafted, nobody really even seemed to want to claim it or not drafted, but was signed, whatever. Like he was on the Baylor football team, but it doesn't even really feel like it. And he was here for the same amount of time as William Bradley King. I don't know why it's all that different, but yes, he has also gone on to the next level as well. So
yeah, he's with the Giants.
New York Giants. Sorry. He's with the Giants. But there's your 2, and wasn't really expecting much outside of that. But William Bradley King, I mean, he's not ideal size, not ideal position anywhere, not real fast. Yeah, I mean, that all adds up. And then, really didn't play his main position last year or really have that great of a year. I mean, you lead the team in sacks with 3.5. But, that was also a defense that was really stinking good. He might have got lost in the shuffle a little bit at times as well. So, yeah, best of luck to him. Hopefully he can stick around, but it's not going to be easy on that Washington defense, that's for sure.
No, definitely not. Not easy to find playing time, but I do think that there are ways that he could contribute, but in the NFL, it's really, he's going to have to find a way to make an impact even when he's not on the field, whether it's on special teams or just different areas where he can try to impact the game. I do think that we saw flashes of what he could be in the college game, and you saw it when he was at Arkansas State. He really had a really nice year before he came to Baylor. Was solid for Baylor, but again, it just wasn't consistent enough to really get the looks that he needed to be drafted any higher than he went. So this is what ends up happening, but he is in the league. And like you said, maybe that'll start a run for Dave Aranda and company. And I do think next year's class, Baylor could have a few draft picks, which would be nice to see.
I mean, shoot, they better. Tyquan Thornton, Terrell Bernard, Tristan Ebner.
Jalen Petrie, Raleigh Tejada. Yeah.
I think Petrie and Tejada will be interesting to,
size-wise.
Yeah, but
they got to run well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all the usual. I mean, they size, speed, all the same things that matter every year will matter for them too. But they could have chances. Kalen Barnes, like I said, there could be a handful. There could be up to 7 because there's not. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that maybe not hitting on, like R.J. Sneed. Did I say his name?
No, but guys get their year back. So that's the other kind of who does end up leaving is the other, I guess, tricky part about it.
Right. All right. Anything else? Baseball, tennis, all that's still going on right now. Men's and women's tennis have found their seeds for the national tournament, Grayson, and both of them with top 10 seeds going into the postseason.
Yeah, women's tennis with the number 8 overall seed. I think that's a good place to be. They went 23-4, and I think they flew under the radar because of how good the men's team was. But they're in a pretty good region. I think that if you look through it, they're going to run into some tough matchups. I think Duke and Alabama are the ones that are kind of standing out on their half of the bracket. But I do think that Baylor's going to find themselves with a shot. I think they play A&M Corpus. They should be able to win that. A&M Corpus was 22-4 on the year, but again, didn't play the toughest schedule. And then they'll play the winner of, like I said, Duke and Alabama, which are the 2 and 3 seeds in that little region, which is going to be at the Herd Tennis Complex coming up on May 8th. So that's this weekend. So they're going to be in a nice, tough test, but I do think they'll be able to get out of that opening round of teams and maybe move on a little bit further. So I think that would put them in the Sweet 16 if I'm doing the tennis bracket right. I think that's what it puts you in. And then as far as the men's, a little disappointing because I know Michael Woodson was thinking they could be the number 1 overall seed. They end up with the number 2 overall seed, which again, got to be pretty happy with. You're in a good spot. Winning the Big 12 tournament definitely catapulted them up a spot. If they would have lost, I think they could have dropped as low as 4 or 5, but they do get the number 2 overall seed. They're going to take on A&M Corpus as well, which I found interesting. They're both playing A&M Corpus, definitely probably a regional type thing. And then they're going to take on the winner of Alabama, who went 14-11 in a tough SEC, and the number 3 seed Oregon, who went 16-6. Once again, I expect Baylor to have no problems and move on to the round of 16, which would be I guess May 8th this weekend. They're going to be playing here as well. Round of 16 is May 17th, and then the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship are the 20th and 22nd in Orlando at the USTA National Campus per usual. So really exciting stuff. I think this Baylor team's got a great shot at potentially making a really deep run. They're the number 2 overall seed, so the expectation is that they can make it at least to an Elite Eight, maybe even a Final Four.
All right, so that's going on. Baseball, meanwhile, got a big blowout win of Prairie View A&M last week. That's really all that's been going on. That's the only game they've had since the big series win against Texas Tech out in Lubbock a couple weekends ago. They'll get it fired back up against K-State coming up this weekend in Waco. So Steve Rodriguez and company will get back to it. Not really much to add, as they haven't been playing. So.
Right. So they don't play till this weekend, like you said, Kansas State. But currently in the Big 12 standings, they are 4th at 7-8. Texas Tech 10-8, Texas 13-5, and TCU 15-3 are the upper echelon of the conference. Of course, Baylor has Kansas State coming up, who's 6-9, actually have won 6 games in a row. So kind of a sneaky hot Kansas State team that Baylor's going to have to play. They also have Oklahoma State, who's 8-10, and Oklahoma, who's 6-9. So honestly, a really good opportunity to win all 3 series. And I'm not going to say they have to, because I think they can be in the tournament without doing that. But it's just a good opportunity to raise their RPI. Currently, they're at 31, so a great chance to move inside maybe the top 25, maybe even the top 20 potentially if they can continue to win games. Probably not in the hunt to win the conference. TCU, at 15-3, it's going to be really hard to catch them, but a good shot to possibly get up to a 2 seed level, which is obviously what you want to do if you're not going to be able to host.
All right, elsewhere, Tristan Clark's headed to SMU. And we had him on the show yesterday. Best of luck to him. A lot of people, I guess, didn't know, and Smokey pointed out a couple times, why didn't he come back to Baylor? They, whatever. I guess they ran him off too. No, he actually had his medical retirement, so therefore he could not return to Baylor. Can't medically retire and come back to that school. So just for anybody that needed clarification on that, best of luck to Tristan Clark on the next big step for him, returning to the hard court.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do. Of course, I'm from San Antonio, so I actually saw him play in high school a little bit and just thought he was such a special player. Obviously, the injuries really took a toll on him, and the last time we saw him play, it's just one of those things. The last time we saw him in action, he just was not the Tristan Clark that I've seen. He was not the Tristan Clark that everyone's seen. And he mentioned how it was a mental aspect, a mental hurdle that he really had to overcome. So I'm really excited for him. I'm not the biggest SMU fan by any means, but I'm definitely going to be cheering for him to have a successful season and really just get his confidence back because you don't want to see talent be wasted or ruined by injury. That's just kind of the worst thing you can possibly see. So I'm going to be cheering for him. He was going to be an all Big 12 first team candidate before he got hurt in that 2018 season. So I'm hoping he gets back to that form and goes out, averages a double-double for the Mustangs and possibly leads them to a tournament appearance.
Yep. Good luck to him. We'll see what happens, and maybe they cross paths with Baylor down the line. Who knows how it'll all work out, but that kind of wraps up the various news and notes for this week. A new women's basketball coach, got transfer news, got all sorts of stuff going on. But let's get into the mailbag, which we've got more than enough time for this week. We had some questions from last week that we did not have time for, so we'll start off with those. And Joe Bear, regarding the quarterbacks, do you think Grimes will name Zeno as the starter but use GB like the Saints used Taysom Hill for run reads?
Yeah, I mean, I still think, I still think Zeno's going to be the starter. I really do. That's been the vibe that I got all spring, that I do think it's going to be him. But I've also mentioned, I think Gary proved that he needs to be on the field to some extent. And if that means he's going to be used like Taysom Hill, I think that's a perfect situation for him, because when you see him run those read options, he can be really dangerous. And in goal line packages, I think he could be dangerous as well. So, yeah, I mean, that would not surprise me at all, especially with the problems they've had with running backs getting downhill in a hurry. You know Gary's going to get downhill in a hurry. So, yeah, that could be a very interesting take right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it, but I need to see more from Gary Bohannon, because I've seen way more from Taysom Hill. You know, we say that Gary can get downhill, but do we really know that? Because I have barely seen this guy run, and I've barely seen him throw. I mean, quite frankly, the top 5 plays I remember of Gary Bohannon are like him coming in a very predictable situation where it's very obvious that he's running the football or that,
Well, his career game was UTSA, where he just ran for 100 yards.
Right.
Against.
And how long ago? That was a billion years ago, it feels like, at least.
And the score was 56-14. There was no pressure.
Yeah. So, I mean, we need to see more. But, I mean, if he's able to do that, then, yeah, that would be a nice little wrinkle. I'm not sure, how much they would go to the well on that one. But the more options, the merrier, especially for an offense that had trouble scoring last year. Also from Joe was 5-star freshman Kendall Brown coming in. What type of player would you compare him with from this year's championship team? To that end, do you think Brown will stay for at least 2 years? Has Baylor men's basketball ever landed a 5-star before?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just answer the last question really quick. Yes. They've landed the number 1 player in the country, Isaiah Austin, before. So, yeah, they have Quincy Miller, Perry Jones. Those are the 3 that come to mind for me for 5 stars. Is anyone else come to mind? I think it's just those 3. So, anyways, as far as Kendall Brown goes, I'm extremely high and extremely bullish on Kendall Brown. I think that he is going to be a one and done. I think he's going to be very, very good. He's a guy who, my biggest thing for him was his ascension. He was really good as a junior, but the way he ascended his senior year, he's a very special player who can play both ends of the floor, a great defensive player, which kind of makes me think, he's not going to be Davion Mitchell. Don't get me wrong. He's not going to be going out and guarding guards. But I do think he could have a similar impact Not to the same level, but have an impact as far as creating steals, getting blocks, really playing in transition extremely well after forcing turnovers. He's elite at that. Elite hops. You're going to see a lot of dunks out of him this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I think he's going to be kind of that type of player. If he shoots 35% from three, Baylor has a great chance to be a Final Four contender once again. He has a great chance to be a one-and-done player because of his length, his ability to defend. The only question on him is his three-point shot. And like I said, if he's shooting in that 35% range, he's got a great shot to leave early. And I do think he's going to be a starter. I think he's going to be a day one player for this team. And I just think he's going to be a very special one who Baylor fans probably grow very attached to in one season.
Joe also said, thanks for adding color to our lives, fellas. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you. Joe, this is from Doc Crowell, also from a couple weeks ago, getting back to answering these questions. Someone mentioned Squirrel's recovery timeline as being similar to Bernard's. Does that mean Bernard will be out a long time and take a game or two to get back into the swing of things, or Squirrel's just recovering nicely from his injury? Bernard's not going to miss any games unless he has some sort of setback. And he could have done way more this spring if not just for them wanting to hold him back more. So, no, it's more of Squirrel is coming along, I think, maybe perhaps quicker than expected. But I don't think they're even trying to put a timeline on him playing, at this point. I think it's all just like, hey, he's doing well. Let's keep him doing well. And I can't imagine there's too much discussion on, like, what he can or can't do. Or I mean, as far as, like, any expectation for him playing anytime soon, I doubt there's much of that. But they fully expect Bernard to play, like, game one right out of the chutes.
Yeah, for me, I think the recovery timeline part was more having to do with recovery from their particular injury, if that makes sense. So I think Bernard's recovery timeline, he's ahead of the timeline. I think he's going to play game one. I think he's going to be ready for the fall. He sat out all spring. From what I can tell, mainly precautionary and making sure that he was at full strength when the fall came around. As far as Squirrel goes, I think it just means that he's doing well in his recovery, and that his timeline is looking very positive. But, everyone loves Squirrel, and Squirrel was so special last year and so fun to watch. But I would just urge people to have patience because
Grayson, the women's basketball coach is already a failure. Come on now, get with the picture and let's get on to the next thing.
But my point behind that is you don't want Squirrel to come back and get hurt again. You want to take your time because Baylor needs him at full strength. And if they can ever get a full year out of Squirrel, that's going to be a really special year from the running back position, whether that's this year or next year. I think it's just really important to exercise some patience because you want him at full strength when he comes back, full confidence, overcome mental hurdles, overcome all of the things that come with serious injuries like this before he's rushed back into action.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just kind of nailed the nailed the hammerhead, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't help me out here. You hit the nail on the head. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So there being two different injuries, a shoulder versus an ACL. So, that plays into it. And Bernard had surgery, and I mean, he had it how much sooner before Squirrel did? I'm trying to think of even when they both got hurt, which is all fuzzy now.
Bernard was definitely before because Squirrel got hurt in the Iowa State game, and Abram was already starting in that game. Maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah, but again, it was, different injuries anyway. So, hopefully Bernard looks as good as he did in the spring, just from what little we saw. He looked pretty good and was still just kind of 75% moving along half the time, probably, if even that. And Squirrel is just nice to see him out there. But, man, after what we saw last time, just no rushing him back. I mean, there's no reason to put him out on the field anytime soon unless he's 100% healthy. Just no reason for it. So maybe we see him next year. Maybe we don't. I don't know. I'm not really worried about it. I just want that kid to get healthy and not have an experience. Like last year, that was just so heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking the way he was running. I mean, it's his time, like the rare bright spot in that entire season. And it's like, hey, there's some momentum towards the end of the year. And then just like, blah.
Boom.
I mean, the worst thing that could have happened. So, rooting for Squirrel and Bernard to both have healthy years for sure. All right, so I think that was all of the ones.
Doc Crowell's a couple more.
Oh, does he? Okay, I guess
Here, I got it.
lost my place.
Out of everybody who played defensive back in the spring game, who do you think will have the best career at Baylor overall? Wow. That's a tough one. Do you have I guess we're also counting seniors, right, and what they've done already?
Yeah, so I'm sitting here thinking of Raleigh Tejada, Kalen Barnes, the young guys, I don't really know. Like, I don't have much of a – I mean, Lorando Johnson, if we're going off just like solely like buzz coming out of spring,
But he didn't play in the spring game, so does he count? Or I don't even know. Because he would be high on my list as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever you think to answer it.
I'll say Kalen Barnes, I guess. I think that if he stays another year, he'll be really successful. And as far as a younger guy, Lorando's a good one. I would also probably look at Devin Neal as a potential answer there. I think he showed some flashes of what he could be. So I guess older guy, Kalen Barnes, younger guy, either Lorando Johnson or Devin Neal.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Al Walcott as well, safety. And
I like Devin Lemire, who came in for Lorando because Lorando didn't play in the spring game. I thought he played really well. He had a sack, a couple tackles. I felt like he had a good performance too. So he's another interesting one. Again, that nickel star position is a little weird how you define it, but I guess I'll count him as a DB.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a bevy of names, but I don't think anybody just really stands out that much further unless you're going with the older guys who we've kind of seen a lot of already.
Petrie, I mean,
Yeah, which if you count him as, I mean, he is, but he's also kind of a linebacker, so whatever. Yeah. Was there another one from that bag?
He had one more. If you had to pick one person in Baylor football history to face Apu in a sumo match, who is it?
Laquan McGowan.
Yeah, that was the easy answer for sure. I was thinking him. I also would love to see Bravion Roy just because they're the two most recent.
I mean, that'd be the most violent. That would be the one that would be like the you could actually sell tickets for that one. I mean, that would be a good one. But, as far as like the more sideshow circus act kind of thing, then Apu versus Laquan McGowan would be something else. But as far as just physically violent and man, I bet two guys who could get heated in a hurry, Apu and Bravion. That'd be pretty sick. Is that it?
That is it from last week.
Okay.
So now we're at the top.
All right, let's see if we can't get we should be able to get all these in relatively easily. Doc Crowell, is the defense right now how Orlando would like schematically, or will we see it change as he recruits his own players rather than using the last staff's recruits?
Yeah, I think the defense
is his defense.
Yeah,
at this point. I mean, look at Apu and bringing him in to solidify that nose tackle. I mean, look at the usage of guys like Petrie and like the hybrid, corner safeties, whether you call it the jack or the jack and the
star
position. That's his defense. I think that they're about where they are. I just think they would like more of what they have. I think they would like another Apu. I think they would like a good proven couple edge rushers would be good. Gotta love what you have a linebacker and then just depth at safety and at corner. But that's pretty much, I think, Grayson, what they would like.
Yeah, I think that you might see differences in personnel and maybe how guys look on the field, if that makes sense. I do think at corner, and this is no slight against Raleigh Tejada. He's obviously great, but I think they would rather, recruiting-wise, when you're specifically only looking at recruits, having two Kalen Barnes. If they're making that decision there. If you're looking at the linebacker position, Terrell Bernard is unbelievable. Don't get me wrong. He was terrific in high school, but there were knocks on him speed-wise and what he could do as far as athletic upside. Obviously, he's answered all those questions during his career, but I also think if you look at the guys they're recruiting, they're going after more athletic guys and more, faster guys, guys with maybe higher upsides, even though we've seen what Terrell Bernard's been able to do. So I do think that there are going to be differences in maybe what the players look like and how they fit in the defense a little bit. But schematically, as far as this is what we're going to run, I don't see many differences. in that. So if you're going to look around at positions, I'd say the Jack is probably the most notable because the only recruit that is really, I guess, his, I suppose, in that room is really Victor Obi. I mean, and that was kind of an early addition. I don't even know if you'd count that for Aranda. So I think that room specifically is one where they're trying to add guys who maybe fit exactly what he wants a little bit more. Even though I think he's going to get great production out of the guys that they currently have. So I would say there might be differences in who he recruits, but once again, schematically, how it looks, how they're going to run their defense, it's going to be very, very similar.
What players are going to benefit the most from a full summer to learn plays and build their bodies under Valoria?
Yeah, players that are going to benefit the most. So for this one, I'm going to...
young guys, I mean, automatically.
Yeah, young guys get the automatic boost. I would also say big guys get an automatic boost. So a guy like Garmin Randolph, who we saw have a really nice spring, I think his body's just going to continue to grow. I was really high on him as a recruit when he came in, and I just think you're seeing him. His body just needed to transform. He's kind of that B.J. Thompson mold, but he's actually been able to put weight on and be able to keep the weight. So Garmin is one I'm really, really excited about. Like you said, a lot of the young guys are obviously going to get bigger and get stronger, but he's probably the one that I look at and go, man, he could have a huge summer leading into the spring. And then, all the freshmen, obviously, are going to put a ton of weight on and get a lot stronger.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be kind of like if you ask that question next year and the year after, it's going to be the same answer. The young guys and the guys who need to change their bodies. I mean, that's what the offseason's for. So, that's who will benefit. I think Lorando Johnson, Devin Neal, any freshmen, sophomores, guys we haven't seen play a ton. I mean, I just think they all have opportunities to. And then the Tyquan Thorntons, he looked different during spring. He could put on more weight this summer. So long as he just gorges himself, basically. But he definitely looked like he'd put on a little bit of weight, and that could be another focus for him. All right, Laughing Grin just had a suggestion about the mailbag. So we do appreciate. I did read that, Laughing Grin, and thank you for the suggestion. Brown Bear, any update on preferred walk-on C.J. Rogers? He seems to be woefully under-recruited and could be a steal if he stays with Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, if he ends up at Baylor, which I believe is going to happen, he'll move in May along with all the other recruits. And
let's get this clear. He's not starting next year.
No.
Because I've seen his name 5 times in the last week, and I'm pretty sure we just wrapped up a full spring of quarterback battle, and he's not going to jump in and win the race.
And just because he is a steal does not mean he's going to be the starting quarterback for Baylor next year. He was a guy brought in.
Or ever.
Very true. Because of his upside is why he was brought in, not because of who he currently is.
I know.
There's a long way to go for CJ. And CJ, I mean, talent-wise, and you look at him, you go, that is not he should not have not been recruited. Schools are missing here. But I also think pump the brakes. He's not going to come in and be a true freshman starting quarterback as a preferred walk-on, in my opinion. I would be very shocked, even though I do think his upside is there. And he could be a guy who eventually competes for the job. But I think the veterans, I still think Zeno and Gary are the guys to watch as far as heading into the fall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you realize how good he would have to be to come in with no spring ball and just jump in late summer with no proven ability to run this offense on the field? Or at all, or a single class taken, a single meeting attended.
And only played, 4A football?
Played 4A football, and, I mean, granted, that's a nice level. No, it's 4A.
Argyle, 4A with the best team by a mile.
I mean, but, the best team he played was La Vega.
Who they beat by...
Right, who's,
30.
very talented, but still, I mean, so, I don't know. I'm just trying to cut the head off of the whole... the backup's always the most popular guy thing, but I already see it coming, kind of like I already saw whoever was hired to replace Kim Mulkey was going to get some sort of is that it? But, that's kind of the cycle of just being around long enough now. You kind of see those things happen over and over.
And get ready because this year, if game one...
yeah, for sure. With no set quarterback, it's going to be...
It's going to be a disaster every week if the starter doesn't perform up to expectations, which is 400 yards and 5 touchdowns every game.
Right. Yeah, and Brown, I'm not just singling you out. I'm just... I've read C.J. Rogers' name, I swear to you, more times in the last, 8 days than I have in like the last 8 months for real.
Right.
So I guess that's just a product of spring wrapping up and just, making sure he's going to be on the team. But I mean, unless something changes, he'd be a Baylor Bear. Like that's all pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah, should be in May when he arrives. Yeah. And just like I said, that's the only update. There is no other update on any offers that have come in or anything like that, which is good.
Jeremy, who's expected to be on Collin's staff and why doesn't it need to be an all-star staff?
I do not know who's going to be on this staff. I think that's definitely more of a Brian question, but I do think it does need to be an all-star staff just from the aspect of Kim's was an all-star staff. She had a really good staff with her, and I would say most of the coaching staffs that do really well at the college level have really good staff surrounding them. And I think the biggest thing for Collen is getting a recruiter, getting someone who can really recruit, and whether that's keeping Coach Messer and keeping Coach Brock. I mean, that would be great to keep those two. But if she's going to bring in her own people, which very well could happen, I just think one of them needs to be an ace recruiter to really help her transition back from the WNBA game to the college game.
Yeah, I mean, recruiting. I mean, all the competition around you's been doing it for a while now. And, I'm sure there's a lot of folks who are, smelling blood in the water or whatever when it comes to, being able to take advantage of Mulkey being gone or whatever the case may be. So, yes, somebody who knows the lay of the land around the state, somebody who can, or however many possible that can just recruit, period. And this isn't like football. Like, you don't have to stay with, like, the in-state Texas girl. I mean, you do want the Texas kids, but this isn't like football all the way. You're not filling out an entire roster where there's 11 guys on the field at all times. You know what I mean? Like, you can get – I mean, at max, you sign like 4 players a year anyway. So
and now half of them are transfers.
Yeah,
so.
I just this so rings a Matt Rule. Although I haven't heard her, but like just the same things I'm hearing. I'm like, who? So they automatically suck. No Texas ties. Even though, like, again, that's totally different in this case than football.
Pro experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm weird, man, because this is like the era of having to have an opinion on everything. And I'm just like, let's just see what happens. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, let's just see what happens. And, like, why does it have to be a home run or a strikeout less than 24 hours later? And I'm going on a side rant there again. Let's see. Aranda staff landed difference maker via transfer on the O-line.
Yes, that's definitely going to happen. And people keep saying it's not going to happen or don't expect it to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to land at least one transfer, maybe 2. It's just going to happen. I think they'll be quality. I think they're going to get a starter at right tackle and potentially a starter at guard.
All right, and Fairway Bear will close us out this week. What are some reasonable expectations for the next 3 seasons in football? Wins and bowl appearances.
I'm just going to go straight bowl appearances. I think 3 is a reasonable expectation. I would say an average over the next 3 years of
20-plus wins overall. I mean, at least.
8 wins a year, so 24 would be the number if you win 8 a year, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to have a non-bowling season in the next 3 years. You have a young quarterback, and you've got a good defense to build off of. I mean, if you're still rebuilding an O-line in the next 3 years, then I'm probably dead. I've probably jumped off a mountain and just said, screw this, because I'm tired of this O-line.
Yeah, and also you have to remember the schedule only turns once. So 2021, the schedule is really good. 2023, the schedule is also going to be really good. You only have the really tough road slate next season. So you should have 2 years where you have a great chance at potentially winning, 9 or 10 games with 1 year in there where you just need to make a bowl.
What are the reasonable expectations for the next 3 seasons in football draft picks?
That's such a tough one. I feel like I'd probably say double digits would be a good place to start.
Yeah, I would hope so, because, I mean, that's like 3 a year. So if you have 6 or so, 5 or 6 next year, I mean, I know everybody's got an extra year, but, like, Tyquan Thornton's not going to come back for another 2 years, in my opinion. Tristan Ebner's not. RJ Sneed's not. Raleigh Tejada's not. Kalen Barnes is not. Siaki Ika won't. So all these guys are going to be gone in the next 1 to 2 years. So that to me, that's just 6 guys I named. Now, not all of them are going to stick, but I think most of who I just named will get a shot. And that's not even mentioning the Garmin Randolphs, the Ben Simses,
TJ Franklin.
So
Hall. Yeah.
bare minimum 10 in the next 3 seasons.
Connor Galvin.
I feel like bare minimum you should have 10 guys drafted in the next 3 seasons.
I agree.
Recruiting rankings, you can handle that one.
Yeah, this one, reasonable expectations, next 3 seasons, I would say, I guess average-wise, they need to be in the top 4. That's really the biggest thing. They need to be in the top 4. That's a reasonable expectation for their average over the next 3 years to be 4th in the conference. Now, if you have one season where you finish 7th, it's really hard to get back up to 4th because you're not going to be able to be in the top 2. Texas and Oklahoma will always be in the top 2. But I do think that you could get up to 3. You could slide as low as 5, but you need to be in that range. Of course, a lot goes into that. If one team takes 28 players one year, it might be a little bit harder to get to that number. But as far as average recruiting rank, they need to be in that 3 to 5 range.
Yeah, that puts you with Iowa State and
TCU, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and the other schools, if you're hanging around with them, then you're not doing well. If you're hanging around with the Kansas schools, it's not going well. Or Tech, just whatever there. West Virginia, they don't really recruit all that highly. So, it wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily to be next to them or close by them, but it's also dependent on what kind of class Neil Brown's putting together because I respect him, so I know he can recruit. The other 3 are just whatever. It doesn't look good if you're sitting next to them in the recruiting rankings. And Fairway Bear, I expect us to hover around 5-7 to 8-4 and make. As far as their predictions, I expect us to hover around 5-7 to 8-4 and make 2 bowl games. We can get a couple wins against TCU and Texas. I'd be happy. I would think this year has the most potential given how good our defense will be, but offense obviously has a long way to go. The 2022 season could be rocky because of how many key defensive players we'll lose. Could be, but man, that's so far away. I got to worry about 2021 first. I'm not worried about 2022 yet. But, in theory, that could potentially be a thinner defense.
One thing I would say, though, to combat that is, Tejada, Bernard,
I got to stop worrying so much, man.
Right, but, you return Gabe Hall, TJ Franklin, Siaki Ika. You return your whole defensive line. Dylan Doyle, Abram Smith will fill in for Terrell Bernard a whole year from now, so he'll be even better. You're seeing depth at the star position. You're seeing depth at cornerback. If Kalen Barnes stays another year, you're feeling pretty good there. Morgan and Woods will both be back unless they just have crazy year. You're not losing. You're losing good players, don't get me wrong, but you're also returning a lot of veterans. You're returning seniors, guys who have played a ton of games. I think the bigger thing with 2022 is the fact that you have to go to Oklahoma and Texas during this season, which is obviously a lot tougher at Iowa State as well. We'll see if Matt Campbell comes back after what should be probably his best team ever this next season. It could be rocky, but I also think there are positives as well. And you also have a more veteran quarterback, which could make the offense better in year 2 under Grimes.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley might not even be at OU in 2022 for all we know, So, I guess that way early look ahead, then, that defense could still, I don't know. I just expect Dave Aranda's teams are going to always have good defenses. So I'm not really worried about drop off or filling spots plus it's a transfer market nowadays. So,
and these are finally going to be his players. You got to remember Bernard, Petrie aren't guys that necessarily he recruited to be a part of this scheme. So I think that's also a big factor. He's going to have the specific guys he wants to play those positions too.
Yeah. And he'll be 3 years on the job at that point. Yeah. So, all right, that'll do it for us this week. I do appreciate all of you that were part of the mailbag this week. Fairway Bear there closing us on out with some good questions, having us look into the future a little bit. Appreciate those, and hadn't really thought about kind of the accolades over the next 3 years, so that was interesting to think about that for a second. Also, thank you to Jeremy and Brown Bear and Laugh and Grin and Doc Crow. And glad we could pick up those questions as well from last week. And, Yeah, who knows if next week could possibly be as busy as this one was or the last few days have been. But welcome Nicki Collen to Waco and to the Baylor women's basketball program as the new head coach of the Lady Bears, and just the fifth head coach in Lady Bears history. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but I ranted on this earlier. I know it's message boards and it's the internet and it's social media, so everybody's going to have their opinion and all that, but I truly do just hope, and being all serious, that everybody keeps an open mind and doesn't, whether you've knee-jerked already how the entire thing's going to play out, like just, let it breathe a little bit and give this lady some time to kind of do her thing and have her bumps in the road, just like Aranda's had, or Drew had, or Rule had, or even Mulkey early. I mean, it wasn't perfect for her right out of the gates either. So I'm sure people will be understanding, and big shoes to fill. So I look forward to hearing Nicki Collen and what she has to say here in the next day or so. But Grayson, anything before we go, man?
No, just excited for her and excited for the Lady Bears. I think there's going to be a nice transition. Excited to hear what she says tomorrow as well. That's going to be really fun. And premium side is absolutely blowing up. So thank y'all so much for your support. I know the radio end as well is doing just great. We're seeing some historic numbers on both sides. So really excited about that. And thank y'all for your support. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to do this without y'all. So really appreciate it.
No doubt about it. Yes, we will hear from Nicki Collen soon. We'll hear from Mac Rhodes later today as well on the hire and get some of the details on that and why she was the choice. And, just stay locked in to Sikkim365.com, the premium section in particular, and spread the word so we can keep growing this thing. Appreciate Armstrong Sims for running the behind the scenes today. I'm trying not to cough with like 10 seconds left. Thanks to Grayson Grundhafer. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to you for listening. I'm Craig Smoke. This has been the Bearcast on Sikkim365.com.